Well, I have finished chapter 76, so we got to talk about some stuff, but we got to back up a little bit. So we'll get there, but going back, Shallan, the thing that she saw in the mirror with the wide eyes looking back at her surprised was an unmade? That's not good. Hoyd showed back up, which was pretty cool, and in standard Hoyd fashion, told a story about moons that went completely over my head, which is fine. But there was a sealed jar in his pack that Shallan noticed, and he immediately covered it up. What's in there, Hoyd? What you got in that little pack of yours? Some special pickles, maybe? I'm curious. But then she asked him if he was a herald, and he said that when the heralds were babes, he'd already lived dozens of lifetimes. And then he said the word old is used for shoes. He's something else entirely. I have said this before. Hoyd is not just a guy. He says, oh, I'm just a man. No, he's not. He just said that he's significantly lifetimes older than heralds that are thousands of years old. So, I'm just saying. And Shallan looked into his eyes and said that she saw eons of time passing. What? And then when Hoyd leaves, Pattern said that he feels like a spren. You guys all know, I have no idea what a spren is, even thousands of pages in. And Hoyd feels like a spren? Or, okay, what do I do with this? So then, flash forward, Kaladin does a lashing on a rock, and then Spren starts screaming, and then Fuse showed up, which was kind of wild. So, the Spren here in Kholinar are working for the Fused, which are doing Odium's bidding? That's my assumption as to what's going on here, which is really interesting. I do love that Scar and Drahe are pals with Adolin. It's just a fun little thing that I love. Those three, because they saved Adolin from going over the chasm, that he's yeah, he got us some really nice wine, and now we're just drinking buddies. I love that. And then Adolin teaching Kaladin hey, if you're going to be a real warrior, you need to know how to use all kinds of weapons. And he's you should probably learn to use a sword. It's just a good idea. And I was I love this. Because Kaladin's a good fighter, but Adolin is a duelist, put a weapon in his hand. Adolin is the weapon, which I love. And then I met Azure, who is actually a woman, which is really cool, and possibly a Radiant. I'm interested to see what kind of Radiant she is. And then in the following chapter, Shallan, she heard a voice in her head say, I am not your enemy? What is that? If it was anyone else, I'm okay, there's someone talking in her head. But she has so many personalities now that I'm shit, maybe she's saying it to herself. But no. It might be Odium, because Odium was trying to pal around with Dalinar and was listen, hey, come take a seat, pal. And he's no. So maybe that was Odium. Maybe it was the Unmade. Maybe it was a Spren. Hell if I know. And then Dalinar meets with Tantalon, and Tantalon's hey, you've got a traitor in your midst. You should probably go and handle that. And it was a trap the whole time. And then Dalinar gets up, and he's oh, it's time to scorched earth this place. He's we're going after the men, we're going after the women, we're going after the children. I was holy shit. That's not good. But then Dalinar and Sadeas are talking to each other, and Sadeas says that he would rather cut out his own heart than betray Gavilar. Which, do I believe him? I don't know. Sadeas is a straight up sociopath. That dude does not give a shit about anything or anyone else. To the point where they get a bunch of oil and they get a bunch of, torches and shit. And they're all right, we're going to burn this whole place to the ground. And Sadeas was there's going to be, tens of thousands of people. But hey, we're going to save lives by quelling this rebellion right now. And does not care at all. Damn. So then some messengers come up and Dalinar's kill him. Kills him. Goes to what he thinks is a safe house. Lights it on fire. Hears screams as he walks away. And then he's okay, I think they got they got the message and was like, we can let the rest of them go. And Sadeas was like, I don't think so. I think we need to really do this. Then there's a palace, and they see Tenelon, and he's running to go get his family, and Dalinar's like, I don't think so. And then Tenelon says that the safe house that he burned was actually a prison, and that Evie was in there, and that she had come there to try and plead for their lives. Which, here's the thing. Evie was a really good person. She was, from another kingdom that had different traditions and was having a really hard time with Dalinar. But what did she think was going to happen? I'm not saying, listen, that should not have happened. But your husband is the Blackthorn, who is notorious for murdering thousands of people by himself. And you're going into enemy territory to try and convince them? But this was never going to work. So it was more just stressful than anything else. And then when Dalinar found out, he strangled him to death with his own hands, and he died with a smile on his face, which is pretty wild. Granted, his family just got killed in the collapse of the palace, so to know that Dalinar killed his own wife, I guess there's some sort of thing there. But then Dalinar was like, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. Which, it is. You lit the safe house on fire. But she should not have been there. It's like, she's not a dignitary. She has no political power. These are not her friends. They are, quite literally, her enemies. She is the wife of the Blackthorn. Oh, this is just not good. I will say, prior to now, my assumption was that Dalinar, which actually I think I've mentioned, and I guess I was kind of right. I mentioned that my theory was that Dalinar kills his wife in the midst of the thrill, which he technically did, I guess. But I thought it was going to be something like she got him mad, and then he just blacked out and then woke up, kind of like the myth of Hercules, where he wakes up and he murdered his entire family. I thought that's where we were going with this. Still, burning your wife alive is real bad. That's real bad. Ooh. Damn. I guess we'll see how he processes this. Obviously not well, because he goes to the Night Watcher. But why did she do this? Why did she do this? There was no way that this was going to work. There was no way. I understand. I get it. She couldn't handle the killing anymore. Mind you, been at war for 6 years, but it was just needless. You know what I mean? And it didn't accomplish anything. And just, damn, dude. I guess we'll see what happens next, but damn.